Hi, everyone. It's Mackey with Rise Above Yoga, and we're here with another interview for the Outcome Mastery interview series. Today, I have my good friend, Nile Abasi, who is a men's coach and group facilitator. We are so excited to have him here today, and let's give him a moment to introduce himself.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So yeah, my name is Nile Abasi. So I facilitate men's groups. I teach embodiment, coach to embodiment. I'm also a trained ICF certified ontological coach. And yeah, so basically I create structures for men to be more of themselves. And we run a group called Man Unleashed, which is basically around men as a culture taking off the leash and the societal impositions that we've placed upon ourselves, in order to become a more full expression of who we are and a more powerful version of ourselves.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is such an inspiring topic to me and really aligns with the work that I do as well. And I know we've talked for many years about this. So I think bringing up the topic of men's work is so important in this industry and just overall, like in the conscious collective, because it's something that's getting a lot of popularity and a lot of recognition these days. So I would love to just kind of hear first about your business and like the intention, that you have with it and your purpose. And then dive into like what is men's work and how what that looks like and where we can see in society that we need it or how we can work on healing within the masculine.
Yeah, that sounds like a rich topic. Um, so from business perspective, I started as a coach and just doing, over the phone, Zoom calls, more of mindset training. And one thing that I found as a man was that there was only so far that I could go intellectually. And there's only so much that I could do when I shifted my mindset. And there was a component that was missing, which is when I found embodiment. And that was, which is basically like the totality of who you are, working with the totality of who you are. And I think a lot of, with personal development, a lot of times we focus on how we can shift our mentality, and which is completely beneficial and necessary. And I think the part that particularly men forget about is the body and how to get, how to do the somatic work to get the body involved and aligned with your mind. And then you get into, like physically the body, but also emotionally. And there was a plethora of work that I did that really helped me become more of myself, become more whole, which is essentially kind of what embodiment is. So started as a coach, and then it wasn't super fulfilling just doing the phone calls and stuff, and there was something missing. Kind of found it for myself. And so then I opened up my practice to include more of one-on-one work in person, and then started a men's group here in San Diego, and with a group of four other coaches. So kind of like a mastermind. And we did a lot of work with each other for about 6 months. And it was so powerful that we ended up opening up the container to other men, and started doing community events and started facilitating. And it has just been such a powerful turnout since. One piece that I want to speak to about the embodiment, because a lot of people are like, well, what is embodiment? And an example that I like to use is, say somebody has a project around speaking or speaking powerfully. There's a lot of work that you can do through the mind in overcoming the limiting beliefs, and and getting to the root of why you don't use your voice to begin with, as whatever happened, in childhood. And there's a lot of work that you can do with shifting your perspective, but there's a missing piece in that philosophy of like actually having the experience of speaking powerfully within your body and within your nervous system. So that's where embodiment kind of bridges the gap between, the the mindset coaching work that a lot of people are exposed to, and then how does that show up in your body?
Totally. And it's so powerful. And I realized that for someone, like you kind of just said, like for someone who hasn't done this work, like it could sound kind of foreign or confusing. So maybe like, could you give, I know we've done some embodiment work together, and I've worked with you and had some like great revelations from it. Could you give like an example of like, a specific situation or like what that really looks like when you take a client out to do this deep, deep inner work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, a lot of it is emotional stuff as well. So if you have, say that you have an ex-girlfriend, or you recently went through a breakup, and there's a lot of things that you can do to shift your perspective and to see, to look on the bright side, or see where the gifts were, and that's really powerful work. But I would say that a lot of people still have resentment and anger in this experience trapped in their body. So for this example, I mean, there's a lot of different embodiment practices, but we would actually bring somebody out to some space where they, like they can be as loud as they want, and they can say whatever they want, and they have space to feel safe to express themselves. And we would, if somebody's struggling with resentment or something, I would create a space where they can move that resentment through their body at a 10. Like, not just, say some harsh words or something, like really move that fully through their body and take it to a 10. And oftentimes what you see is experiences come through people's body that their mind didn't even know was there. So they'll say things they didn't even know they were upset about, or they'll speak a truth that they didn't even know was inside of them. And so they basically like have a space to honor more of themselves, and then learn more about themselves in the process, and kind of free that part of themselves. So that's one around emotions. I mean, embodiment could just literally just be, are you feeling the ground beneath your feet as you're sitting here? Do you feel heavy, and do you feel rooted to the earth? Do you feel present? Like, are your shoulders back? Is your neck down? Is your spine aligned? Like, there's a lot of different pieces to embodiment. So I think it just depends in what area we're looking.
Right.
But the beautiful thing about it is you can get really creative with it. Like a lot of it is just making art out of the experiences that you go through.
Yes.
And eventually it's practical. You show up differently in life. The way that you speak changes, the way that you sit, the way that you interact with people, the way that you make eye contact, like all of these things shift and expand in the process of kind of aligning the mind with the body.
That is like such an amazing, depiction of what you could possibly do with the embodiment work, because we all have emotions that, we've repressed or things we've kind of numbed out, whether it's from recent happenings or childhood or whatever the case might be. And I was writing about this the other day and like really thinking about it, like the importance of having this safe space that you're able to create for clients, and that these groups can create, or, working with you privately or whatever, just because I think when we have the need to express like that, when we think about a child or a baby, just being in the middle of a restaurant, like having a little meltdown, not really caring about what's going on around them. As adults, we're programmed for a number of reasons, like respect and social responsibility, like whatever, to like not do that, which is good in a sense. But also, I think just because we're not babies anymore, like there's still that part of us that needs to release, especially if we're going through like a trauma or something really like intense is happening in our life, like physically present, and the emotions are physically present, and we have a 9 to 5 to get to next or tomorrow or Monday or whatever. So where is the time for this expression to really happen? And if you live in an apartment, you're like, I can't scream in my apartment because my neighbor, the walls are paper thin, like everyone's going to hear. So it's like, where are we really supposed to do this without getting, I was thinking, like, where is this fear of vulnerability coming from? And when I was going like deep into the thought, I'm like, well, what's going to happen? Like, the cops are going to get called if someone's like scared for you. You might get institutionalized, like you might get judged. Even if you try to express with like a loved one who isn't educated on how to handle that, like you might get like this persecution against you for having these feelings. And I think that's like a really like fear-based programming within us, and why we can just so easily be like, oh, I'm just not going to worry about that, or I'm just going to get a cocktail, or like I'm just not going to think about that, So this work is
Find a place to put it. Yeah, that's right. People find places to stuff it.
Yeah.
You go, like, people find a way to go around it, as if it's like gonna go somewhere.
Right. And then it just goes within the physical body, which causes physical pain, emotional pain, long-term trauma. Like it just resurface constantly and aggressively as time goes on.
Yeah. Well, you bring up the tantrum piece, and that's the greatest example is, and you see it with kids. And I mean, I know a lot of viewers have probably heard this before, but like the way that people respond when kids express themselves, it's like you learn at an early age, oh, you're out in a restaurant, you don't honor the depth of what you're feeling in the moment and create art with it. Like we're bred that way. One of the greatest embodiment practices is to throw a tantrum.
Yes. I could agree more.
Men out there, like, when's the last time you threw like an intentional tantrum? I'm not talking about blew up and like lost your stuff. Like really intentionally threw a tantrum and just let go of control. And what's interesting is like what I've noticed is women are naturally just bred to be more embodied. They're culturally, they're allowed to express themselves with movement and emotion, and and you can see like the byproduct of that, which is they're like women are rising, because they're in touch with this directional leadership, like structured nature, because everyone's learned, it's like the masculine, but they're also bred to be in touch with some of that femininity and some of that embodiment. So I think women are actually bred to be a little bit more embodied. And I really see that throughout, my world. It's like to see a lot of these women in alignment, and, it's kind of like a call forth the men of like, we're missing out, like they're getting ahead, like women are really, really rising. And I totally honor that. And it's just a call forth to men to step up.
Definitely. And just finding that balance for women as well, to embrace the masculinity piece that maybe they're removed from, and for the men to embrace that femininity of that full embodiment. But I definitely agree with you on the whole women being in their bodies a little bit, I don't want to say a little bit more, but maybe so. Just depending on, your belief system and what you've seen in life, just because I don't know, as a woman, like I just feel like really intuitively connected to my body. Like I always kind of have, like we go through these cycles that are very, very present physically in our bodies. So just by having that like going on my entire life, I felt like that's been something I've always been pretty grounded in. And then the like logistical, like mental thing is what I've really had to like harness and work with and figure out how to process the emotions and the thoughts and the world around me and create this like embodiment with all of that.
100%.
It's definitely been more challenging pieces than others.
100%. In the, you asked about what is men's work and kind of, like what is women's work. And for me, men's work it's kind of like a movement, and you see it through different groups and kind of throughout the country. It's slowly growing, but it's basically a call forth to men of, we're going to gather together and take responsibility for the culture of men and masculinity in the world and in our communities, and come together and hold each other accountable and work with each other and call each other forth. I feel like, I was raised by women, and I feel like women hold enough, like especially of men's stuff. Like it's creating a space where we as men can call each other forward. And there's, a boatload of, there's a bunch of work that you can practice within men's circles, but really I think the overarching intention is just we're coming together and taking responsibility for the bodies, the gender of the body that we were born into, regardless of what we've done. And, most guys in the world, and even, especially my age, like we haven't done, we're not responsible for what men have done hundreds of years ago, but it's the call forth and the call to leadership to take that responsibility. Like we're responsible for how it moves forward, for the balance, for the recalibration. And it's more of a movement, like a lot of people think of like Christian groups that, that have men's groups, but it's more of a movement. And there's a lot of different outlets and expressions that you can apply to that movement. But I think that's the overarching idea.
Yeah, and that resonates so much with the work that I do with like recently studying like epigenetics and DNA and ancestral healing, and just how like, yeah, maybe we aren't, or men aren't, anyone's not responsible for what happened like hundreds, thousands of years ago, but the programming is still there. And so the behaviors that we're exerting might resemble something of our ancestors or something of that time where, experiences were happening that, yes, we don't have control over, but the RNA and the DNA programming is still within our bodies. And so, when we start looking at it like that and we start having science proving these things, like in actuality, that this is passed down and these programmings are happening like beyond our control, this is where we break the cycle. And by doing this work as a man, or joining a women's group as a woman, or whatever you feel called to do and how to do the work, it really allows you to acknowledge and release it. And I always say like pretty quickly, like it takes time to get into the practice and to get comfortable, but once you kind of start, like it's like a streamlined process. You can get a lot of shit done in a short amount of time.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it has such a huge effect on not only relationships, like romantic relationships, because I think the way that a lot of men use relationships, either consciously or unconsciously, is like that they bring things that they wouldn't normally bring, all the things that they're not expressing or they're not honoring, they bring to their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And like oftentimes it's like, I've heard it referred to as like, can I cuss on this?
Yes. Always.
Sure. Like taking all of your shit out of your intestines and like giving it to your partner and being like, love me.
Right. And I think we've all experienced that or been that person on one level or another.
Yeah.
I'm like, oops.
But it's because like we have such vulnerability and intimacy with a partner, and we don't feel safe to bring, especially as men, like this anywhere else. We're not gonna bring it to our buddies or our coworkers, or so the men's group space is like, hey, bring all of your shit, like bring it raw, bring it wild, bring it like however it shows up. And you have a group of men that are like, not only will they hold it, but it's benefiting them holding it, because it's strengthening their ability to hold space, which is strengthening their masculine, more of the higher side of masculinity.
And just having that moment to unpack it when it's not in the middle of like a triggering argument or like a somewhere you're going to be like literally throwing bombs at people.
Yes. Yeah. Which is what, one of the big things is with embodiment is learning how to respond rather than react.
Mm-hmm.
Like responding to situations is actually rewiring your nervous system to be able to act within integrity rather than just, to react impulsively, which is reaction is where, when we get triggered and where we act from the trigger place and trauma, and, it's learning to respond to that. So you can, and it's not to say to not be vulnerable with, your significant other or the other people in your life, but that you have a space to really bring some of the darker stuff and some of the things that you haven't processed yet. And that, maybe your significant other that's very emotionally involved with you in a lot of different arenas, like it wouldn't be the healthiest thing to process that with her or him. And then you can actually reveal that, that experience to them artfully. You
Yeah,
can
and you have another safe space to go to, resource in those moments. Because I know so many people rely on their partner as like the only outlet of emotions, and like all this, responsibility and weight gets put on them when we're all just trying to live our life. And some of us are like, well, guess what? We can't carry this right now. And then that causes a huge conflict with people.
Yeah, it's very cyclical.
Yeah. And then that relationship ends. Okay, I'll get a new partner. Guess what? It shows up with the next partner and the next until you really start like realizing that this is just a big mirror that, once you look into, you're like, who is causing all of this?
Hey, yeah. What's the common denominator?
Yeah. I'm looking at the mirror and all I see is myself. Like, anyone else there?
And I talk to men within the community and outside of the community, and these guys are like, and I'll talk to men that might not even like resonate with some of this stuff, but one thing that I really like to do is phrase it in a way in which people can hear it, right? Because a lot of guys don't even know what full expression means, or becoming whole within yourself. Like, this is a certain language and not everybody speaks that language.
Yeah.
So what we really wanted to do with our group was open it up to hold space for a range of different people, range of different men. We have such a diverse group, ethnically, as far as like what they do and like for work, background, age, it's so diverse. But we created a space that was so dynamic that it could hold all these different personalities and languages and like ways of being. And men are desperate for this space. Like,
Yeah.
I just talked to so many guys that they don't know that it exists. And some guys even really see the value in it. They still just see it's completely outside of their comfort zone, and they're just not ready. But even just having the conversation with men, when I bring up men's work in groups, like it's almost just creating a space for them in that moment. And they can feel that of like, oh, wow, I can actually like talk about some of this stuff, even if it's for 5 minutes, and they are craving it, and they eat it up, and they really like it. It really nourishes them in a way that they didn't know possible. So just see it. It's like people like it. It's very clear that men need it.
Yeah. And I think it's unfortunate that so many people like run away from it, or, get a little like intimidated by it. But I think just by like keeping the information accessible and opening the doors on as many platforms as we possibly can is just so important, because it just plants the seed. And then when someone's ready to take that full embodiment, or, dip their toes in the water, or just try a little baby step in, they'll really get to see, especially when you are in a group and you see other people doing it and you see other people's transformations who have been doing it for 10 plus years or whatever. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, look what the potential is, and look where we could go with this. So it's really amazing work. And I think the more we're talking about it and sharing about it, and like you said, it's a movement that's progressing so quickly. It's going to become like it already is, but I think for the entire collective to just be a regular part of, our schedules and regular part of our routines to participate in healing work for men and women.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the key, is it is men and women. Like a lot of women actually have, that I'm in connection with, are pretty like are very interested in borderline, like really looking for a space like that as well. And there are a lot of women's circles, there are a ton. But I think in this day and age, it's not really about like it transcends gender. You embodiment work, the work that we do in our groups, women could do the same exact work and get like the same, if not more value. It's really about, balancing feminine and masculine energies within you. It's not so much about gender anymore. We come together to kind of take responsibility for men because it's powerful that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a statement. But we collaborate with women's groups. I think polarity work, which is, doing some of the work that we do, but with men and women, and getting feedback and really having candid conversations that we're not having collectively. I think there's so much value in that. So really it's not, to me at least, it's not just a men's movement. This is a movement around humanity.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think the more women who are open to doing this practice, and, the more groups for women that are created, not to diversify it, but just to keep like the men having their safe space and the women having their expressive space in the ways that they're able to connect with those similarities is important, because I know a lot of women's circles can look a certain way, or have a certain stereotype, which in a lot of my experience has been like really quiet and really like coming into like this grounded, sacred, candle flower lit space, which that has a ton of benefits and I'm a huge fan of. But also, stomping on the beach in privacy and, getting grunting down and almost having like that birth like experience that is going to be safe in a situation where you're dealing with something emotional that you're ready to purge out, and just kind of getting animalistic with it is so important too. And I don't see as many of those groups for women as I do for men, and they're coming, they're on the way and on the rise. But I think sometimes we think like that animalistic nature and that like violent nature is like the only men need to express that. And we need to remember that women have that side. I think we've all seen a woman get angry or violent or something in our life. And, that's some pent up energy that needs to be released one way or another.
Yeah. Well, it's back to more the mindset stuff too. And I feel like a fundamental flaw or just missing component to the culture and even personal development and spiritual work is there's a lot of bypassing that animalistic urge and expression.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like you intellectualize it and you like you try to kind of control it and contain it, but that experience is still within you. And I've found that the more in tune you are with that animal nature and that killer and that, like those parts of you, like the more trustable you actually are, the less pent up it is. It's like, it's funny because the more animalistic and intense and expressive you can get with these practices, the more peaceful you become. It's not like it makes you really aggressive, but when you need to use these different archetypes and these different energies within you, like anger, for example, a lot of people think like the goal is to not get angry. The goal is that's not the goal, at least in my eyes. It's to integrate anger and use it with a specific intentional purpose.
Yeah.
Right. Setting boundaries with somebody
about what's allowed.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you can actually use these parts of yourself for a purpose. I'm a big practical person. I like integration. I like to see it impact my life. And if you want to set a firm boundary with somebody, like you're going to utilize anger, not to say that you're going to blow up, but you're going to use it consciously in within a dosage that someone can actually really feel, and it will impact them, and they'll get the message, oh, that's a boundary.
Yeah.
Like it's not about pushing these sides of us off, and trying to overcome them mentally. It's just get in touch with them, express them, and then utilize them in your daily life. It's
Yeah.
becoming more of you.
And using them wisely, and not irresponsibly, where again, like you're just kind of like smearing your shit all over the place. Like nobody's got time for that. Oh, well, this has been great. And I know you and I could talk about this for like hours on end because we have before. um, but I would love to just go into the finishing question that I have been asking everyone. And it's any self-care routines or something that's been present in your life, what kind of celery juice trend or whatever you've been on these days that you've been noticing been effective and been, bringing positivity and joy into your daily routine.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I'm a big practical person, earth element. So to me, my morning practice and morning routine is everything. Like it very drastically and clearly impacts the rest of my day. Um, so, and I help clients create this too. And it's really like, it's not cookie cutter. Like you can go do Tony Robbins routine, morning routine, but it's probably not going to work the same for you. It's really about like creating your own. So for me, it's, a lot of embodiment. So literally like getting back into my body as soon as I wake up. I won't look at my phone or anything. I try not to think. It's just regrounding in my body. And I do that for a variety of practices. It's a lot of breath work. And I have a few different qigong exercises and strengthening the nervous system. And then, just the affirmations that I have different statements. I call them I am here to statements. So the things that I'm here to do, that match the projects and the other structures that I have. So it's basically like it's every morning, every single morning. It's an action of commitment. So those are the things that I do, but I don't think they're very important. They're awesome practices, but it's more of the way that you make your life sacred. Like what are you committed to, and what actions, as soon as you wake up are reflective of that. So it could be anything, but I think it's that, like, it's programming yourself every single morning. Like, this is what I'm about. This is who I am, and then taking action that's aligned with that.
I love that. And it's so funny because it resonates so much with a lot of the other answers from like the other people that I've asked this question to, just keeping that intuitive nature there and keeping it free flowing, and just like really emphasizing that no morning practice or routine will look the same for anyone. And if you're striving to do like this 1 hour yoga every single morning thing and like it's not feeling like it's working for you, then it's probably not. And like probably better to just find a shift or, shorten it or integrate something else that will bring you some joy, and just kind of changing it as time goes on, because we're humans and change is inevitable. So it's better that we embrace it rather than run away from it.
And one little piece on that too is, I think, especially with more driven people and people that like to do things a certain way, and they push themselves, the most powerful practice I've given a lot of those people is to do nothing in the morning.
Right.
Like people that really want, like, completely let go and just do what you want in the morning for a week and see what arises.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it almost every time it's completely reset it, and it's taken the obligation and the expectation off, and really like people can arise and just do what they want to, and like, and it takes the pressure off of it. And then people can establish a routine that's actually more aligned with them.
Yeah, because the whole point of it is to, set your day in a positive direction, not to wake up in this like militant way where you have this checklist that if you don't do and you're late for work, like whole day's ruined and blah, it's just gonna blow up. So yeah, that is so important. Thanks for sharing. And
One more little practice. I know we're going over. I'm sorry, but I really want to stress this. This one changed my life completely. Is it's developing the capacity and the ability to hold yourself in any situation. And it's this part is very mental as well, of like, when you're feeling insecure or you're feeling like you're not doing good enough, or it's literally like rewiring your thoughts to be like, I am okay as I am, and I can show up however I want, and I'm not wrong. And it's kind of reparenting yourself. This stuff really changed my whole life. And it develops what we would call energetically the masculine within you, of like, can always hold space and is always there and is consistently holding space for love throughout whatever experience you have.
Absolutely. And the reparenting thing, I mean, we could talk for like another 5 hours about that, but it's so important to like, really listen into that inner child and check in with your body and your nervous system and your emotional, spiritual, physical self, and let the things that are present be present instead of just pushing them aside, and just really embrace them. Give your inner child a hug, tell him or her it's going to be okay, and like you can move on pretty quickly after that. Like just the acknowledgement alone is a form of embodiment that can be so powerful in any moment.
Speaking my language.
Yeah. Well, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you and where they can learn about the program and the group work and everything that you have to offer?
Yeah. So the movement, or the group, it's much more grassroots right now. We're going for quality versus quantity. It's not, we really want to set the intention of like, that it's for the movement, and set that intention first. So the best way is just reach out to me on Facebook, because I like to talk to people. I like to have the conversation. You can find me on Facebook, Nile Abasi. Instagram I don't use as much, but you can find me on there as well, Nile Abasi. And that's pretty much it. I mean, as far as like coaching, I have a pretty good community of especially of men. So if you're interested in coaching, you can reach out to me as well. But it's really, for me, it's not about the quantity of people. It's how can I serve people, the community, and the world to the greatest extent, and if it's a fit, it's very clearly a fit. If it's not, it's not. And I kind of trust the alignment of that. So reach out to me if you feel called. I'll just say that.
Awesome.
I got plenty of outlets.
I'll put the links in
plenty of opportunities.
Cool. Yeah. And I think that's, the important piece of the safe container is, having that quality over quantity. I'm like, did I mess that up? Mentality, so it does keep it that safe space where this real work is getting done and it's progressing really intentionally. So I love it. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing. It's always nice to have a friendly face on the interviews. And
thank you for having me. I love what you're up to per usual.
Thank you. Well, I will talk to you soon and have a beautiful day. Bye, everybody.